there and welcome to this week's Deep Dive. My name's Honor Criswick. I'm a meteorologist and presenter here at the Met Office. I'm one of the new presenters. This is only my second Deep Dive video, but thank you so much for your lovely comments on the first one. We've got lots to unpack. Even the weather this week, there's quite a lot going on. We've got some heavy and persistent outbreaks of rain at times, some quite strong gusty winds too. We already have a couple of yellow Met Office warnings in force for strong winds as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. So we can talk about those in some more detail. And we're also going to talk about temperatures this week too. We're going to see a slightly cold dip in temperatures as we head towards the middle part of the week and then turning more towards average, perhaps slightly milder in some places as we head into the weekend and into next week. So leading up to the Christmas period. Speaking of Christmas, we're also going to unpack the Christmas forecast. So if you are dreaming of a white Christmas, well, we can find out today what the likelihood of that is going to be. And also alongside the weather this week, obviously some quite strong and gusty winds at times, and we're going to just explore a little bit. Obviously it's quite hazardous at times, that type of weather, particularly on the lead up to Christmas, lots of people travelling around. But for you avid cloud spotters out there, we could see some quite interesting cloud formations at times. We might see some interesting satellite imagery. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about some mountain waves and how those form and how clouds can form in association with those as well. So the weather this week, we'll talk about Christmas, and we've got a little bit of theory in there as well for all you Met heads watching. So to start off with then, let's just have a quick look at what's happened over the last few days. It's been rather cloudy and gloomy and grey at times, not quite the sort of lead up to Christmas forecast that you'd really want. Particularly in the northwest of Scotland, they really drew the short straw in terms of frontal systems moving in. They saw plenty of outbreaks of rain all through the weekend, and this really added up in terms of rainfall totals. You can see just from the brighter colours there from the radar imagery. So it was the northwest of Scotland that really caught the brunt of those weather systems moving in from the northwest. Sorry, it was one after the other, and we saw quite a lot of rainfall in this part of the country. Even in western areas of England and Wales, we did see some periods of rain and drizzles and quite cloudy skies at times. Best of the weather generally was across central and southeastern parts of the UK, where it did generally brighten up as we headed in over the weekend. So what's in store for the weather this week then? So we'll start off by taking a look at we'll take a look at the bigger picture for one on the far left, where we can see those frontal systems, the pink colours, that's just the jet stream, and also these white colours, that's the isobars, so the pressure, what we're expecting through the course of the week. Here's the kind of general weather setup, so the cloud outbreaks of rain. This is going to show our wind direction here and also any gusts. And on my far right here, that's going to be the temperatures they're expecting this week as well. So let's get into it. So we can already see from the beginning, so this is sort of Tuesday afternoon. So we can already see low pressure generally dominating to the west. That's going to feed in some frontal systems, which we're already starting to see move into parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, even some drips and drabs just moving into parts of southern parts of Wales and southwest England. So through the course of this afternoon and into tonight, we're going to see more and more of that rain feed its way in. This could be turning quite heavy and persistent at times as it moves its way from east to west across the country, quite erratically at times. So we could see some quite heavy pulses of rain along that cold front, and we can see as well from the squeeze in the isobars here, that means some gusty weather on the way, which we can see quite clearly here on the sort of wind field. So these pink colours are just showing kind of gust fields as we move through into tonight. So it's not only going to turn rather wet, it's going to turn quite blustery too, with a couple of weather warnings in force for strong winds into tonight and through into tomorrow, which I'll come onto in more detail in a moment. So this frontal system's set to move its way through over the course of tonight, moving its way through all the way, sort of clearing the far southeast during the early hours of tomorrow morning. But even behind it, still plenty of isobars on that chart, so still plenty of gusty weather as we move through. Then we see a brief sort of brief quieter spell in terms of dry weather. Still plenty of showers starting to feed into the far northwest coast of Scotland, and still plenty of gusty weather in the far north of Scotland too. So particularly for the Northern Isles, Shetland for example, seeing some quite gusty winds at times, perhaps sort of between 50 to 60 miles per hour. So although starting to turn a bit drier by the time we reach midday on Wednesday, it is still going to be fairly blustery. Then it's all eyes to this next area of low pressure down to the far southwest of the country, once again bringing in further outbreaks of rain. But this time, rather than being more confined to the far northwest of the country, it's going to be coming in from a southwesterly direction. So heavy outbreaks of rain starting to skirt their way across much of England and Wales through the course of Wednesday. And once again, still some quite strong blustery winds underneath those cloudier skies too. We almost end up with a bit of a north-south split in terms of weather, where it's going to be a bit colder just to the north, parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England, colder. We may see a few more sunny spells, but still plenty of showers, particularly around western coast, starting to move through. Across the south, however, still staying largely mild, highs of around 13 Celsius by the time we reach sort of Wednesday afternoon, but cloudy, outbreaks of rain, and this heavy at times. And we could start to see some significant rainfall totals just start to tot up across parts of the south too. So there's not currently a rainfall warning out, but there's a chance we could see one as we head into tomorrow. So do keep an eye on our website for those. So persistent and heavy outbreaks of rain at times through the course of Wednesday, and this low pressure does look like it's lingering on through much of Wednesday night through into Thursday, but it does eventually clear its way through, and we start to see more of the sort of showery regime move more and more further south across parts of England and Wales by the time we reach early Thursday morning. So a few more clear spells by the time we reach Thursday. Now, another thing you may notice, it is still going to be fairly gusty, still plenty of ice bars on the chart, so still some fairly blustery weather on its way. So when you do start to see these showers move through, they could be quite blustery. And where it's going to be quite cold, just to the north of Scotland, we could see some flurries of snow, mainly across high ground in parts of Scotland. Still with those strong winds confined to the Northern Isles of Scotland too, so still fairly strong winds located here. But another thing you might notice is that our wind direction then becomes more of a northerly. So this is when we're going to start to see a bit more of that colder spell of weather moves through. So this is during the early hours of Thursday. Now, with the blustery weather, that's going to stop any widespread frost formation, but it is going to be feeling cold. And when we do have quite strong winds and a cold air mass as well, that can really add on to the wind chill of the temperatures too. So if I just drag this through Thursday afternoon, you can see these kind of peak temperatures are only sort of around 7 to 8 Celsius in the south, 5 to 6 in the north, compared to earlier in the week where we were seeing highs of around 13 to 14 in the south, which is above average for the time of year. So this is going to be cold. I think average for the time of year in the UK is about 7 degrees or so. So temperatures returning more towards average, a bit lower in some places, but alongside those strong gusty winds and that wind chill, that's going to make things feel even chillier still. So it's going to be quite a different change of feel by the time we reach Saturday. We will probably see plenty more sunshine, but you'll have to kind of wrap up warm to enjoy it. But if you're not a fan of kind of the cloudy skies and the rain, then this might be a kind of welcome difference as we head into Thursday. So a bit more sunshine around, a few showers around coasts, but feeling quite cold as we head into Thursday. And then it's later on Thursday night through into Friday. Just drag this forward, where once again we see a return of the cloud and rain. So this is the early hours of Friday. So once again, area of low pressure just situated over Iceland. That's going to drag in a few more frontal systems. So once again, some outbreaks of rain moving through, this time returning and hitting the northwest of the country first, but still with that chilly weather by the time we reach Friday as well. So this will move its way southeastwards through the course of the day, once again kind of moving erratically towards the southeast. But we could see some quite heavy pulses on this rain as it moves through. But to the far north and to the far south of this, once again, there should be plenty of dryish weather around, particularly across the far south and southeast. You may see a few sunny spells break through the cloud as well. And to the north of this, there will be some sunny spells around, but plenty of blustery showers once again returning. So there will be some drier weather around to the far north and south of this, but those outbreaks of rain are moving their way southeastwards as we head through into Friday as well. So changeable is probably a good word to use for the weather this week. Once again, a slight ridge as we head later into Friday and Saturday. So once again, another slightly calmer spell. But then through into Saturday, we are expecting it to turn unsettled once again. You can notice, if I draw your attention to the gust fields once again, we're going to see a return of that very blustery weather as we head into the weekend. Once again, frontal systems bringing in some outbreaks of rain, some showers behind, and we've still got that fairly chilly weather pattern as well moving through onto Saturday. So it's going to be quite unsettled as we head into the weekend. Saturday and Sunday likely seeing some pretty blustery showers actually. So plenty of showers. These can sometimes merge, bringing longer spells of rain at times. They could be heavy and they probably most likely falling as snow across high ground too. Still, once again, plenty of ice bars on the chart. We can see from the gust fields here, still a chance we could see some quite strong winds at times, generally confined to sort of western coasts of Scotland, western and northern coast of Northern Ireland. We might just see some brush through the Irish Channel as well. And even eastern parts of England and Scotland could see some quite blustery weather. So once again, Saturday through into Sunday, quite an unsettled picture, and likely to feel quite chilly once again in those brisk north to northwesterly winds. So there's quite a lot going on actually in the weather this week, with outbreaks of rain, some quite strong and gusty weather, and a brief colder spell. By the time we reach Sunday, it's still going to be quite chilly, as I say, particularly in those winds, but generally temperatures returning slightly closer to average, if not just below. But obviously, as I said, in those winds, it could just feel that little bit chillier. So alongside the quite windy weather, we do have a couple of Met Office yellow warnings in force. So I'll just drag those over here. Oh, here we go. Try and get them both on the chart for you. So here we go. So there's one warning. This is kind of this area just to the west here, and then this second area just running through the central spine of the UK. And so the one across central areas, that's just accounting for kind of gusts to the lee of high ground, which we quite often see with this kind of wind direction. As the winds move up from the southwesterly direction, they move over hilly areas, and then that creates gusts just to the lee of high ground. More on that later. And then we also have a secondary area just to the west, affecting western coasts of Wales, eastern coasts of Northern Ireland, and also western coasts of Scotland. But this warning area is also up through the Irish Channel as well. So there is a chance that we could see potential disruption through some ferry routes, particularly if they're travelling kind of east to west, as those winds are kind of coming from a south-southwesterly direction. This is for Tuesday night through into Wednesday. So a chance we could potentially see some impacts here, which is why the warnings have been issued, as well as lots of people travelling around for the Christmas period. So if you are out and about, particularly if you're travelling around for the lead up to Christmas, don't forget to stay updated on our website, as we already have warnings issued, and there is a chance that we could see more as we head into the new week as well. So stay updated, and of course we'll update you here on YouTube and across our social media channels. So quite a lot of gusty weather around, but not only that, we've also got plenty of rain moving through as well. So just want to draw your attention to some of the kind of rainfall totals that we could potentially be looking at. Obviously, as I've said earlier in the week, it was mainly confined to the far northwest, those kind of increased rainfall totals. But as that system that I explained that's moving up through the southwest, just drag that forward. Here we go. So if I just drag this through, here we go, to tomorrow evening, well, we'll start to see that rain as it moves its way up from the southwest. You can see here from these brighter colours that we're likely to see some potentially quite significant rainfall totals. I mean, these are over a 3-hour period, so some quite intense heavy bursts potentially moving through, particularly for parts of the south, parts of central England, and then later as that system moves through, we could see some high rainfall totals over the 3-hour period across the southeast and parts of East Anglia as well. Even slightly further north, kind of around Manchester area, and parts of Lancashire, parts of Lincolnshire, as well. We could also see perhaps some slightly higher rainfall totals as that system moves through. So a chance we could potentially see another warning in terms of rainfall as we head through later on Wednesday. So as I say, it's always worth keeping updated. But in general, it is worth noting that there is going to be heavy outbreaks of rain. It's going to be quite blustery at times moving through as we head into the week. So if you are travelling around for the Christmas period, do take care if you're out and about, particularly as we head through into Wednesday. One more thing before we get into something a bit more theoretical. I just want to draw your attention to temperatures. So I'm going to see if I can get this one to work. Oh, there we go. I clicked on the wrong one. Here we go. So what's this for? So this is for Hampshire, just down to the south of the UK. So just wanted to draw your attention. So as we head through into, this is maximum temperatures on the top, minimum temperatures on the bottom. So heading into Tuesday and Thursday, you can see it's going to be particularly mild for the time of year. Across the south is where we're going to see those, the sort of mildest of the weather. So 13 degrees, where the average is around about 7 for this time in December. So very mild for the time of year. It may not feel particularly mild, but those temperatures are mild for the time of year. And then as we get into Thursday, that's when we start to see those dip in temperatures. As I say, it's going to be turning colder, particularly if you add on the wind chill as well. But with the kind of strengthening of the winds, that should stop most frost formation. So we're not going to see a widespread frost, but there is a chance we may see little pockets in more kind of sheltered spots where they don't see as much of the wind. Then as we head towards the weekend, as I say, it's still going to be fairly unsettled, but we start to see those temperatures increase for the weekend and into next week as well. So starting to return a bit more around average, if not slightly above across parts of the south. But if we go further north as well, it's a similar kind of picture. This is for Aberdeen, for example. So a slight increase in temperatures. I mean, even in Aberdeen on Wednesday, we're expecting highs of around 12 Celsius. And then as we head into Thursday, that dip, and then we return to something a bit more average for the time of year as well. But we can see even those minimum temperatures, just with those strengthening winds, they don't quite drop below 0. But as I say, a chance we could in some rural spots as well. And I'm probably feeling quite chilly if you add on the wind chill as well. So there we have it then. We've got outbreaks of rain, potentially some quite significant accumulations forming across the south, some quite strong winds, particularly in those western areas, the Northern Isles, as well as those systems move their way across. And we are going to see something a bit chilly and then turning a bit more average as we head into the weekend. So as I say, alongside the strengthening of the winds, we can also see some interesting cloud formations, and this is as a result of something what we call here at the Met Office, or in meteorology, we call them lee waves. So this is a type of standing wave that we can see in the atmosphere, and it's generally a stationary wave with respect to the Earth's surface, and it takes place where we have a mountain or a barrier, and the wind's generally moving across this mountain at around 90 degrees, and you need a particular wind speeds and a particular wind direction for this to take place. But as a result of these kind of lee waves that we can see in the atmosphere, we can see some interesting cloud formations, which is a good thing, but it's also quite an impactful hazard in terms of aviation, which I'll explain why in a minute. So I am going to attempt to explain this to you using this diagram as well as my trusty pen. So if you're not a fan of mountain waves, it's probably worth watching anyway, because I've no doubt it's going to be quite entertaining. I've not used this drawing pen before, so we'll see how it goes. So just to recap then, so we have a mountain or a barrier or some hills, and then we've got our winds moving through at roughly a 90-degree angle. And another ingredient that we also need is some stable air aloft, just shown by these slightly darker blue colours at the top of the diagram. And an indication that the air is stable is that we see a temperature inversion, so that's temperature increasing with height. So our winds, they're moving through, they hit the mountain or hill, and so the air is forced upwards. Now, as it's forced upwards, it will hit this stable air aloft, it will hit that temperature inversion, and it's forced back down the lee side of the mountain. And because this air was originally stable, it wants to move back to its original level, so then it moves back to the more stable layer of air. And once again, we have a similar scenario where it hits that temperature inversion, the air is forced back down towards the surface, the air is stable, so it wants to return to the stable layer of air. and so on and so forth. And then we start to see an oscillation begin to appear. So that's the kind of general setup for as what the kind of air does as it moves over those hilly areas. So we start to see quite an increase in wind speeds as it moves down, down sort of the trough of the lee wave, down the side of the mountain. The wind speeds generally decreasing as they move over the crest and so on and so forth. So an oscillation takes place, and this can continue further on down from the mountain range, 10 to hundreds of miles further down. So that's when we start to see the oscillation take place. And the kind of restoring force is gravity. So another name for these lee waves or mountain waves is also gravity waves. And what we tend to find as well, if there's enough moisture in the air, we can start to see some clouds form just at the top of the kind of crest of the wave as well. So the moist air will be forced upwards, it will cool and condense as it goes higher in the atmosphere, and we start to see some clouds, that's meant to be a cloud, form just to the top of the crest of the wave. So then we start to see these kind of cloud formations just start to appear. See if I can get another one on there for you. Just start to appear higher up in the atmosphere. So we'll see kind of almost like a ripple effect, which we can see quite clearly in satellite imagery, which I'll show you in a second, where we see clouds, some clearer air, and then some cloud, clearer air, and so on and so forth. Now, what we can see as well as a result of these wave formations is that we see some stronger winds from aloft. These can be forced down towards the surface as well. So if you're ever listening to a forecast and we're talking about potentially some strong winds, particularly to the lee of high ground, that's usually why, because as that air is forced down the lee side of the mountain, we can see some quite gusty weather at times. So if you've ever wondered why we specify those kind of areas, then you know why. So another thing that we can also see, or that we can also get, as a result of these waves, we can have a change in wind direction, as I've just sort of, wind speed, as I've just kind of mentioned there. We can also see a slight change in pressure. We tend to get areas of low pressure forming just to the trough of these waves. So, sorry, apologies, the pen is quite thick. So we see areas of low pressure just form just underneath the trough of the wave at the surface, and underneath the crest of the wave as well, we can see areas of high pressure begin to form. If I just draw that on here, hopefully that's clear. So not only can we see a change of wind speed as a result of this waving of the air over the other side of the mountain, so we can see a change of wind speed at the surface, but we can also see a change of pressure. So we start to see areas of low and high pressure, and if the pressure difference is strong enough, we can actually see a slight change in wind direction as well at the surface. So you can see why I mentioned it can be quite a hazard in terms of aviation, where we'll see fairly light winds at times just aloft of the mountain, but if that plane then starts to fly lower to the surface, it's likely that they could catch some severe turbulence at times with that change in wind speed as well as the change in pressure. And sometimes these circulations, they can when they occur at the surface, they can actually break away and become their own sort of small-scale circulations. These are called rotors. They can occur in the UK. They're not quite as common. Certain places such as the Falkland Islands in Gibraltar, where they have quite a good in Gibraltar they've got the Rock, and in the Falklands they've got a mountain range, the Wickham Heights, I think. And depending on the wind direction, we can get these sorts of waves, and we can get rotor activity, so areas of small-scale circulations called rotors, as well as some quite interesting cloud formations, such as these on the top. But you can also get what's called roll clouds as well, when the cloud is pushed down the side of the mountain. If you are a cloud fan, YouTube roll clouds time lapse, they're really interesting. It almost looks like a tsunami of cloud moving through down across the hills. So these are the kind of this is the kind of setup that we could potentially see in the UK this week, depending on the wind direction, depending whereabouts you are in the country. So Scotland, you tend to get quite a lot of lee wave activity across the Pennines, for example. Any kind of hilly areas, if the wind direction is set up right and the speed is right, you can potentially see these oscillations move through down the lee side. Down the lee side of the mountains, and we could potentially see some interesting cloud formations just form at the crest of the clouds here, one of which looks a little bit like this. This is a lenticular cloud. At the moment it looks a bit too cloudy to be able to kind of spot these kind of formations, but later in the week, particularly as we start to see that chillier and clearer air, if the wind direction is right, there is a chance we could potentially spot some of these form, particularly further northern parts of Scotland. We're expecting those stronger winds, so do keep your eye out if you're in those sorts of areas. And another way as a forecaster that we can spot these lee wave formations is through satellite imagery. This is actually taken from earlier in the year. It's the kind of best example I could see. But you can kind of see that rippling effect through the cloud, and that's where those oscillations are taking place. So the wind direction more of a westerly, moving over those hilly areas, and those oscillations taking place just to the lee of high ground. So I hope I explained that okay. I hope my drawing didn't confuse you too much. Any further questions on lee waves and how they're formed, leave them in the comments. We do have the live on Friday, so I can take a look and answer any further questions if you do have any further questions on mountain wave activity. And obviously keep your eyes peeled this week to see if you can spot any of those cloud formations. You can tell your friends how they're formed. So we've spoken about the weather this week. We've gone into a little bit of meteorology theory. How about Christmas? Have you been dreaming of a white Christmas? We've had lots of questions around Christmas. There's been lots in the headlines about potentially seeing a white Christmas. If that's what you're after, I might have a little bit of disappointing news, but let's take a look at some of the details, what we're expecting next week, and the kind of Christmas forecast that we could potentially see. So to start off then, I'll take a look at the pressure anomaly. So this is using a range of the models that we use here at the Met Office, kind of looking at the anomaly for the week from Monday the 23rd through to Monday the 30th of December. So running through that Christmas period just before we hit New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So this is the pressure anomaly, and these darker pink colours are generally showing high pressure. So that means our winds are going to be moving in more of a kind of clockwise direction. Now with this kind of setup with high pressure just to the southwest of the UK, that does mean it does open up the way for potentially some frontal systems just sweeping around the kind of northern flank of that high. So that does mean once again the northwest of the country may just get the short straw in terms of any rainfall, as well as there's a chance we could see some frontal systems just start to clip the edge of the northwest of the country if those move through. So although high pressure, yes, most of the time it does mean settled weather. It doesn't always mean glorious sunshine. We can get lots of cloud and moisture trapped underneath that high. So although largely dry and settled for many away from the northwest, it could still mean quite a cloudy picture. As well as the kind of cloud and moisture just moving through across the northwest, on the kind of outer edge of high pressure, we do tend to see once again a squeeze in the ice bars as well. So there is a chance that we could also see some windy weather just start to move through into the northwest as well. So a chance here, parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of Scotland, perhaps just starting to clip into northern parts of England as well. There's a chance we could see some cloudier, if not some wet weather move through, potentially turning windier as well. Across the far south and southeast, though, with that high pressure dominating, any frontal systems moving their way through will most likely tend to fizzle out. So the best bet for the kind of driest and brightest of the weather is across the far southeast. But as I say, if there's lots of cloud and moisture trapped under there, it might be quite a cloudy day. But it should be largely dry across the far south and southeast if you're heading out for a Christmas walk. Obviously, this is the pressure anomaly through the course of the week. But something more specific to Christmas Day, here is kind of one of our ensemble members. So one of the possible regimes out of all the different Met Office outcomes that we could potentially see, the Met Office model outcomes we could potentially see. And this has high pressure situated in a fairly similar place, just slightly situated, just the centre of the high, just slightly further south of the UK. So once again, as I mentioned, just that northern flank of the high, a few more isobars on the chart there, so some blustery weather potentially across the far northwest, and it could just swing in some frontal systems at times too across these areas. And once again, the driest and brightest of the weather across the far south and southeast. So it should be fairly dry across much of the country, but it's just keeping an eye on those northwestern areas for any potential rain or some strong winds too. And it's always very dependent on whereabouts that high pressure sat, slightly further north, and it's probably going to be quite a fine settled day across most of the country, but slightly shifted further south, and we could see a few more of those frontal systems just starting to clip in, not just the northwest, but perhaps western parts of England and Wales too. It's always the best bet that with that more zonal pattern, those frontal systems coming off the Atlantic, the eastern areas are likely to stay driest. So at the moment, there's a 53% probability that this could be the outcome as we head into the Christmas period. So largely settled, just a chance we could see some wet and windy weather in the far northwest. Now, what about any snow? Well, generally this kind of wind direction, it's that slightly milder direction. So if we do start to see our winds move through from the west and southwest, they're coming off from the Atlantic, and that's more of a milder direction compared to if, say, the high was situated further east or further west, and then we'll start to see those northerly winds. But as it's shifted slightly further south, we've got more of a west-southwesterly direction. So if I draw your attention to these are called meteograms, and they kind of show our temperature. This is actually through into Sunday the 29th, the kind of average temperature that we're expecting, the kind of spread of what the models are telling us that the potential temperatures could be as we head through the week. So we can see already, just looking at these box and whisker plots, they're called. So we've got these boxes and then these lines coming out the top and the bottom. They're called whiskers, kind of showing the highest and lowest of the spread of those temperatures as we move through the week, with this red line here kind of showing the average temperature for the time of year. So anything above this red line is going to be above average for this time of December, and anything below is going to be below average for this time of year. And the red box and whisker plots for maximum temperature during the day. So we can see on Thursday there's that cold dip, and as we head towards Christmas Day, so Wednesday the 25th is around here, we can start to see those temperatures more moving above that red line, so more above average for the time of year. And these boxes are actually fairly small, which shows there's not actually much spread in between all the different models, or what all the different models are suggesting. Even between the different whiskers, so the top line and the bottom line, that's the kind of highest and lowest of the spread. So even between the whiskers here, there's actually not too much spread, but overall, the whole box is above average for the time of year. So it's likely going to be just above average, if not fairly mild, by the time we reach Christmas Day. So with that westerly regime moving through, generally that high pressure situated to the south, that's bringing in some milder air, so unlikely to see any sort of widespread snow as we head into Christmas. So sorry if that's a little bit disappointing for you. But there is always a chance that there are some areas, so just to the very far northwest, for example, may just move in some slightly colder air, perhaps across parts of the UK. So or just to the far northwest, because actually for a white Christmas there only needs to be one snowflake to fall, and that could be anywhere in the UK. So even if we see a single snowflake observed in Scotland over higher ground, that technically means that it's been a white Christmas. But overall, looking at the setup, it's not looking like we are going to see any kind of white Christmas. Best of the weather if you're heading out for a walk, likely across the south and southeast, perhaps just some wet and windy weather moving into the far northwest. But of course, we'll update you daily with regards to the Christmas forecast and in our daily forecast in general. Let's just double check if that is correct. So I'm going to get up something very high tech for you now. We've got our snowometer. Let's see what it's saying. Unlikely but stay tuned in terms of a white Christmas. So there you go. Don't listen to me, listen to the snowometer. So unlikely we're going to see a white Christmas, but hopefully I've given you a few more details so you can get going with your Christmas plans. Now, as I say, there's lots of weather going on this week, some rain, some strong winds, already a couple of wind warnings issued. So do stay up to date on our website for those warnings, particularly if you are travelling around going to see friends and family for the Christmas period. But otherwise, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope I've explained things that have made sense. As I say, we've got the live on Friday at 12:15 here on YouTube, so you can always watch that and send in your questions. You can send in questions beforehand. You don't just have to send them during the live, and I'll keep an eye on those to see if you understood and to see if I can explain any further. And I'm sure on Friday as well we can give you a few more details for the Christmas weather as well as we go closer to the big day too. So I hope you've enjoyed. We'll catch you on Friday, if not at next week's Deep Dive. Have a good week. Bye bye.